welcome to the Modernize or Die BoxLang Town Meeting Edition. Thanks everybody for joining us. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but we should be good to go. So, welcome everybody. You can, or you can get on the YouTube channel chat. But can everybody hear us there? Let us know. Okay. Well, as long as Daniel and everybody else can hear us, let's go. Okay, they cannot hear. Hold on. Let me mess with this a bit. It should be. Okay, yeah, turn the speakers up a little bit, and I'm going to try and adjust the sound. But Luis, why don't you take us away? Hold on one second, Luis. I'm going to try to bump up your sound. It's really quiet, they're saying, for you guys. So let me just tweak this. Sorry, everybody. No, mine is way louder than yours, and I gotta separate them out and exclude myself from Zoom. So, but you guys are just coming in super weak from Zoom. But
can't hear.
Yeah,
they said
when I unmute the actual YouTube stream, there is no audio from us. Like, it's not that it's quiet; it is absent. It is gone. No, I'm on a meeting.
If I just hear like
we are speaking. We are speaking. We are speaking.
All right.
We are speaking.
I hear myself now on YouTube, so I think it has been resolved.
We are speaking.
hey, Andrew.
All right, people here now. Yay, people here. Well, that's it, guys. Thanks for coming. We just announced the biggest, most important features yet, but we'll see y'all next. No, I'm just kidding.
To be fair, it's like 7 a.m. for Gavin, so he needs more coffee, maybe.
Maybe.
If only this could have been scheduled at some point later in the day, so it wasn't 7 a.m. for those poor people in California.
I blame my grocery delivery. They didn't bring any Cokes last night. They canceled it, so I'm Cokeless this morning. I don't drink coffee, but anyways, so
not good.
Yep. So yeah. So now everybody can hear us. Let's start again. So go for it, guys.
All right. Well, the purpose of this podcast basically is to have several of the team members working in BoxLang. Everybody here has contributed in one form or the other and continue to do so. And the idea was to kind of open up to questions. I know a lot of people are asking, what does this mean? What's coming? So I think that was the whole point. It's unscripted. It's basically just, we're all here. You can address us by name, or everybody can pick up a question, but the idea is to kind of have a discussion of what we're doing and where we're going. Sure. Maybe let's do a little bit of a status as a state of BoxLang. We kind of gave this with Brad. So let me really
Germany.
quickly get this going. Maybe this will help notice the state. And granted,
So
this
it's
is
in the
already,
state of Kansas, isn't it?
it's in the state of already deprecated because it's already past 2 weeks. So the numbers may have tripled already.
Leading edge.
All right, let me put them up here. Let me read them. Where are they? Okay, here we go. All right, so as a little, I would say, summary of what we've been doing for the past month, I believe we released May 16th. That was our open beta day. So it's been about a month and change. And in that month and change, we've probably reached already 60 pull requests on the core itself. That doesn't include of all the modules. I think we have over 3,500 downloads at this point, combined downloads. We have about 31 repositories that we have available, 20 modules that are completed, actually 21, since I believe Jacob is done with the image module. Maybe he can talk a little bit about the image module today. So we've actually built a full image manipulation library, so Jacob can talk about it. We have about 4 modules that are in development and 15 planned, over 500 commits, over 15 contributors already. We reached 100% compatibility with TFML in what we're calling core tags. So that is at 100%. We released the links for that, for the bits and tags. So maybe if somebody can, I think we added them to the docs, I believe, but maybe we can put them in the chat as well. So we're at 100% of what we are calling core tags, or components for BoxLang. We're about 98% now on core BIFs. I know John already squashed pretty much every single encryption one. So it might have bumped up a bit. So we're almost at 100% of what we have designated to be core compatibility with TFML. So I am assuming that by the first week of July, we'll probably be at 100% in what we believe is core. The rest will come through modules. So that means that the majority of things that will flow out of the team would come in batches of modules, so not the core. So that's a big deal for us to be able to have that. We're still on target for a stable release in fall. So this could be either October or November. So that's something that is still on track with everything that we're doing. And then we also implemented stable beta releases. Well, I don't know how stable they are. Let's put it that way. But there are releases that you can pin to every week. So we decided that every week, every Friday, you will get a new beta that you're going to be able to pin and start working with BoxLang as we progress. Every module is now released as stable. So that means that those modules, if they have any type of fixes or issues or anything, they will go in their normal life cycles. So modules are on their own life cycle, and the core itself of BoxLang and its runtime. So this includes the mini server, it includes command box, it includes AWS Lambda, and our servlet will stick to the beta release format. So that means that every Friday it's a new beta. This Friday will be beta 3. And we're doing very detailed release notes as well. This was important so we can keep track of what we're doing, what we break, what we don't break, right? What the community is basically putting in terms of tickets. And we're also adding that also to the documentation. So that's what basically we've been doing since we released this as open beta. We're moving towards our goal of stability. almost reaching 100% of what we call core compatibility with the CFML language. And now starting to really innovate. I think that the whole team is excited that we got pretty much almost everything in the core, and now we're starting to create tons of modules. We even have a Jython module that we released, so you can script in Python inside of BoxLang, and all kinds of goodies that we've been working on. And so that's what we've been doing holistically in the project.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really know what I was going to actually reply to that one. I don't really know what that means, because they basically do work the same, the language or a framework. A module is just a piece of functionality which is self-contained. It can be uninstalled or it can be installed and then it's present. So, I mean, in that regard, we treat that the same as we do ColdBox or BoxLang. BoxLang modules are designed very similar to ColdBox modules because we like the way that was done. And the main difference is where you install them. So if you're using ColdBox with BoxLang, for example, those modules would go under your modules folder in the web root, whereas BoxLang modules right now go under the BoxLang home. But you'll have to clarify what you mean by being different in regards to that question. As far as stable means it passes all tests, I don't remember exactly what sentence Luis said that involved the word stable, but to be clear, BoxLang passes all of its tests right now. We just add more tests every time we come across a bug. Stable is really more about saying we think this is a stable product with all the necessary functionality to run a basic, I wouldn't even say basic, but to run a standard application in Cold Fusion or BoxLang, which is a little arbitrary as far as what's core and what's not core. But that's basically what stable means. Our tests have been passing for months, and we have over 3,500 tests right now. And so every build that we push out to the download page, every single one of those, every test pass. If a single test fails, the build doesn't get pushed to the download page. So stable isn't really a matter of test failing, it's a matter of the state of the project. I answered Andrew Davis's question in the chat as well, but it's a great question, so I'll mention it here. He asked about supporting session data with distributed caches or databases. Mongo, Couchbase, Redis, and that's already done. Actually, we've ported CacheBox, if you will, kind of into Java. We're calling it Box Cache, and the session storage is already configured to be able to use a cache. So by default, it's an in-memory cache. You can point that to Redis, to Couchbase, to the other providers that we're writing. So that's already an existing feature.
Yeah, to piggyback on that one, that was a huge important feature for us, because obviously we've developed all of the extensions for Lucy before. So we will be porting all of them to BoxLang pretty soon here. That's part of our stable process. We want to have those done before we do a stable release or a gold release. And but those will be part of the Plus and the Plus Plus subscription modules, right? There will be trials and there will be abilities for you to do things on one server, but the majority of the enterprise stuff will go into the Plus and the Plus Plus subscription model. But you can also build your own as well, and it will be extremely documented as well.
Hey, Luis, could we take one step back? A couple questions came in. Some people are hearing about BoxLang for the first time with this webinar. Could we just give a very quick overview of what it is? And then also a question came up, why are we doing this as opposed to using Adobe or Lucy? Or why should people use this instead of the others?
Okay, sure, definitely. So I think a great place to go into details would be through our keynote. Oh, there we go. Somebody already put it. Man, sharp. And also the CF Camp and the Open South Code presentation. So there's about 3 presentations now. There'll be, if you want to go into detail, those are there. But BoxLang is a new language. We designed it from zero. So this means that the whole team basically, we basically sat down with a lot of goals of what we wanted or what we envisioned for a new language in 2024 to be like. The last time a dynamic language was released was probably over 15 years ago, if my research is correct. So there hasn't been really a dynamic language, pointed out, a dynamic language that has been released as early as 5 years. So we really wanted to take the leap here to come up with something that we thought would be a language of the times, and also how we could potentially scale through time, right? We've seen how languages have evolved throughout time, and obviously all software has to evolve through time, through effort and changes and paradigm shifts. So we had that in mind when we developed BoxLang. So first and foremost, it's a dynamic language for the JVM. That means that it's not statically typed like Java or Kotlin. It is dynamically typed like Python. And it also compiles down to Java bytecode, so it can be deployed on any JVM. We've also designed it to be modern, to be fluent and functional. So we do a lot of capabilities for developers to work in a functional environment. We even introduce pure lambdas, or the ability to create basically anonymous functions that do not carry over their context, like closures, right? We had a lot of focus on concurrency, a lot of focus on leveraging everything in the JVM that's modern, okay? Which is really, really important. The JVM has done a tremendous amount of work in making itself modern, and we've tried to implement that as much. That means that there is no reflection. Everything uses invoke dynamics. Even dynamic proxies are using the new way to create dynamic proxies in the JDK. We're using invocable handlers. We've implemented tons of runtimes in order to be able to deploy our language anywhere, basically. So we focus on bare metal first, which is what we wanted. And what we ended up basically creating was a language that is tiny. It's 6 megabytes in size with all its dependencies. And we needed that in order to go places where we couldn't go before. We actually then started to create all the different runtimes, like a piece of onion, decorating the internal core. And at open beta, we basically launched with over 5 different runtimes. We have the AWS Lambda, which powers try.boxlang.io. We have the mini server, which is a pure Java implementation of a mini server. We have the command box runtime. We also have a servlet runtime coming soon for the new Java EE and Jakarta offerings. And we also have the BoxLang language server protocol, which is the debugger, which is actually built in BoxLang. And the entire server protocol actually runs inside of VS Code. So you actually get the entire language inside of VS Code. So that was something that is really unique for our language. So hopefully this is a small intro, and I can go here for hours and what we've done, and everybody's collective vision that you see here of Ortus brought in all of their history, everything that they've done in different languages. I think that was so cool that everybody that you see here in the podcast, pretty much everybody has a deep knowledge in at least 3 to 4 languages. And that is so beneficial to us because we didn't want to just create a language that follows suit. We wanted to actually be the leaders. And then I forgot the other question, Daniel.
Oh, it was why this over using Adobe or Lucy or any of the other engines?
Well, I think that after explaining what BoxLang is, you can definitely concur that this is not Adobe or even Lucy, right? It might have some similar constructs, and that's what we have done. We have taken the best of what we thought came from the initial offering of ColdFusion, right? Since the first versions all the way to now. And we took the best things that we could see and try to make them even better, right? But overall, we are very different in the terms of mission, essence, and goals. However, we understand that we've been building libraries for over 18 years for this language, right? So what we did in order to make this feasible was to create the parsers as multi-parsers. And we put a huge emphasis on having our own AST, which we lovingly call the BLAST, the BoxLang AST. And what this allows us to do is be able to parse.
That's abstract syntax tree, by the way.
And this allows us to transpile basically the ColdFusion language into BoxLang. And this was important, not even important. I think this was just imperative for us to do because we wanted every single library that we built to be able to work without any line of code changes. That was a true testament of what we wanted, right? And we're achieving that so far, is that the majority of our libraries are already running with no line code changes, right? So this gives the ability for anybody that's written their things in ColdFusion to come to BoxLang very easily and run their applications. Their applications will be just in time compiled to BoxLang. And we have also, Brad has also worked on a transpiler that is one way. So this means that it will look at your code in ColdFusion, actually transpile it immediately to BoxLang code as a one-time deal. And then you can even move ahead and start just working with BoxLang.
Yeah, I think an important distinction maybe some people might not be getting is BoxLang is really its own language. It's its own thing. And yes, we have compatibilities for ColdFusion. You can run ColdFusion on BoxLang, but you can also run BoxLang, or we just released another extension or another module recently for Python. You can run Python in BoxLang. It's not the same. It's apples and oranges, completely different.
Did you just answer yourself in the chat, Luis?
I did. Actually, I did a copy paste there. So there you go. It was answering Walter Anderson on will this run on a Raspberry Pi? And the answer is yes. It will run on anywhere.
So I mentioned this in a comment earlier, but and I don't know, I forget if Luis said it. The entire BoxLang core runtime was built from scratch, right? We started with an empty repository, and the core of BoxLang has nothing to do with web, nothing to do with web servers, nothing to do with servlets. It's just a pure scripting language, and that's how we have the runtime so small. It's 6.5 megabytes for the entire core BoxLang runtime. Let me say that again, 6.5 megabytes, right? So you need Java and then a 6 meg jar, and that's it. Lucy is, well, it's unfair to include all of Lucy's modules. Lucy Lite is at best 100 megs once it's unpacked everything onto disk. Adobe can be up to 300 megs, though it's smaller if all the modules aren't installed. So it's not a super fair comparison. But BoxLang is super small, and it also starts up in like 200 milliseconds. So it's a super fast startup times and super small binary sizes. And that's one of the main reasons why we wanted to start a new project, because of all of the bloat and the size of the other projects. So if you're looking at an alternative to something like running Python scripts in the Raspberry Pi, our startup times and our just pure runtime size is significantly smaller and faster than Lucy or Adobe ColdFusion. And that's a lot of the reasons we wanted to be able to do this.
Yeah. Just by comparison, Node.js is 40 megabytes.
You mentioned the different modules of the runtime, or the different runtimes. So it'd be fair to say, Brad, that for Lucy or Adobe, you cannot, it's all baked in. You've got the core and the web runtimes all baked in. You can't separate them. And so that's why it's so big, because that's the only thing you can do. Versus BoxLang, you can mix and match and do whatever you want to do.
Yes,
yeah, that's absolutely correct.
It's 12 megabytes.
Well, hold on. The servlet jar is only this much bigger than the core jar, because all it involves is just the servlet classes. The 10 megabyte jar is actually our mini server, which includes the entire Java web server of Undertow inside of it, right? So our pure just BoxLang plus web support is only a few kilobytes larger than the core of BoxLang.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note here the goal. Our goal was not to be a web language. Our goal was to be a language. And I think that's a major difference, is that the majority of other vendors have started with web and kind of backtrack themselves and bring it into other areas, right? So in this case, we took the time to design this where we really wanted to be first, as small as possible, to run on a Pi, to run on a watch. I mean, our intent was to basically run on the smallest device possible. And then from there, basically start building our runtimes for different types of deployments. Because I think we believe that as the team that this was the only way forward with the amount of deployment that exists today and that will exist tomorrow, right? So that was definitely a different focus, and that's what gives us the huge advantage of being lightweight to be able to target any deployment capability in isolation, and it gives us agility.
I see a question from JS here. Does BoxLang support script and/or tag syntax? Is there a preference on Adobe CF syntax or Lucee syntax? All right, so that's a bit of a multifaceted question. So Luis mentioned the multi-parser setup. So BoxLang has two separate parsers. It has the BoxLang parser and it has the ColdFusion compatibility parser. The BoxLang parser is its own syntax that is separate from ColdFusion. It's very similar to ColdFusion. It's based on ColdFusion, but it's a breaking new syntax that kind of pushes forward. And what we're trying to avoid is what Lucy's done over the years, which is, hey, we thought of a new feature Adobe doesn't do. Let's just add it into our version of the parser. And you kind of you start to get this jumbled mess of what's Adobe, what's Lucee, right? So our ColdFusion parser has nothing outside of what Adobe and Lucee do. That's ColdFusion, that's them, we don't care. Our BoxLang parser has our new syntaxes. You can import Java classes directly. You can add proper real annotations on methods. You can alias imports, right? We have things like that that are the pure functions, right? Those are only in the BoxLang parser. So as far as the ColdFusion parser, if you're just asking about ColdFusion code, yeah, script and tag syntax works. Sorry, I'll stop waving my hands. I'm too close to my camera. Script and tag syntax works, and it works exactly the same as Adobe ColdFusion and Lucee Server does. If you find any issues with that, let us know. We'll fix the parsing. We do have a script syntax and a tag syntax in our BoxLang parser. The script syntax is very similar. It's mostly a superset with additional features. These tag syntax has changed a little bit. It's BX : as opposed to CF on the tags. As far as whether it has a preference, I mean, I'm not entirely sure what that means. The server's going to run whatever you give it, but there are some things we've done in the BoxLang parser. For example, classes can only be written in script. We don't think it makes sense in the year 2024 for people to be writing classes and tags. And so in ColdFusion, sure, do it. We don't care, right? But in BoxLang, no. Classes are written as script. Now you may be thinking, oh, well, I can't use BoxLang. I have like 50,000 CFCs and tags. Don't worry about it. We have a transpiler. We'll transpile your code over to BoxLang and we'll convert it into script for you. That's already built. It's because of all the tooling we've built to be able to do these things automatically that we're able to make some of those decisions. So hopefully that kind of answers what you were asking there, JS, as far as the different parsers. But the short answer is really the ColdFusion parser parses exactly what ColdFusion is today. The BoxLang parser is something new, but you opt into the BoxLang parser when you have a file that you rename to be BXM for BoxLang markup, or BX for a BoxLang class, or BXS for a BoxLang script. If your files are still called CFC, CFM, or CFS, they're still going to use the ColdFusion parser, and it's going to parse just like ColdFusion does today. As far as the question regarding performance comparison metrics, you'll have to let me know performance of what? Performance of compiling code, performance of startup, performance of running an if statement, performance of running a ColdBox app. Performance can mean a lot of things. Our startup performance is definitely faster. Our compilation performance, we're working on improving right now. The runtime performance, I haven't done a bunch of testing, but I figured it'll probably come out pretty close to where Adobe and Lucee sit. But let me know more specifically what you're asking with that question.
This is a question that's pretty interesting. They're asking if it'd be possible for multiple languages to be mixed together, like a CFC that includes Python blocks.
Yeah, I can take that one. So yes, the answer is yes. And that's the idea with BoxLang, is that we've also designed it in such a way where developers can listen to pretty much every life cycle of the language itself. That's why we're calling BoxLang to be an event-driven language. We saw the huge success that this had in ColdBox, in the ability to use interceptors to extend not only the ColdBox core, but the custom applications that a developer is using. So with BoxLang, we've taken it even further. So this allows us as the language engineers to be able to create different interception points pretty much anywhere in the life cycle of the language and the framework portions of the language, and then anybody can listen and extend. And that's how we actually created the Python module, which basically allows you to register a new component or a new tag if you wanted to template. So you can say BX Python and basically open up a tag and start basically scripting in Python. And we create the bridge between the two languages. Now, granted, this is not the raw Python binary that you get if you download it from python.org, right? It has to be a Python engine that runs on the JVM. We use Jython. It's still version 2. It's a little outdated, but we're still looking for options. Mostly, we wanted to make sure that we could run a little bit of Python that we had, and it does. I put the link to the module, and you can see that basically you can not only script in terms of like a nice templating scripting language, but you can also evaluate those scripts with the BIF, which is a built-in function that's available to you. But you can also, if you already have Python classes, you can load them. You can basically say, hey, JS eval, I want you to go and basically read this Python file and give me a class representation. So this gives us a huge benefit by basically leveraging every single feature of what's called JSR 223. This is the standard in Java in order to do scripting for any language. And here's what's coming, PHP and JavaScript. So those two engines will be available to you in order for you to script in BoxLang.
Just want to point out somebody did a shout out on the debugger. They're very excited about that.
I would assume that would be John Farrar, since he said I've been on talking about debuggers for years, and he's the person who always asks about those.
Well, maybe we'll let Jacob introduce himself and talk a little bit about the IDE. And just to preface that, this was also imperative for us, especially like I said before, we've done a lot of coding in many different languages. And the reality is that the CFML tooling for the language itself has been lacking for years. There is no way that a Java developer or a Kotlin developer is going to leave their language and come to CFML in the state that it exists. And that's something that we wanted to change. That is something that was the only way to do it in order for us to be successful, is that we needed to make our tools the same or better. And I believe that the way that we've done, even in open beta, in some sense, is even better than other tools. And this was huge for us. And we've done a lot of CLI tools and the IDE. And Jacob Beers is our lead for the IDE. So maybe, Jacob, you can give a little intro of how the IDE is architected, what you're working on right now, and the plans.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. So I actually just released a new version about an hour ago. So if you open up VS Code and go to the extension tab, you can search for BoxLang and you'll see our official first-party extension there. And we've been adding a lot of new features to it. My favorite feature at this point, which we kind of just got stable last week, is the mini server panel. Where we now have a little icon off to the side that shows the BoxLang logo, and you can click on that and create and manage multiple servers for your workspace. And the thing that's really awesome about that is we mentioned this a couple of times earlier in the talk, but the idea that BoxLang is actually packaged inside of the inside of the extension. So we've got when you install the extension, it comes with the latest version of BoxLang, the latest BoxLang mini server, and also the latest BoxLang language server to provide, syntax and other features to the IDE. But because we have all of those two tools right there, and they're available to the VS Code extension itself, we can use them for manipulating the files or helping the developer experience. So one thing that we just part of this new 1.0 release that we did earlier today, you can go in and just select any folder or file and right click on it and say start a mini server. And it will configure a mini server for that location and prompt you for some information about like port, name, things like that. And then open up your browser right to that file instantly. And then you can start, coding, running it in your browser, getting some feedback. But then even beyond that, we have full debugger support for that as well. So you can go into your BoxLang panel, click a button, and then you're automatically debugging that mini server that you just spun up in like 10 seconds. The mini server has been built to the Microsoft, or I'm sorry, the debugger has been built to the Microsoft debug adapter protocol specification. So we've really tried to stick to all of the different features that they require you to have to be compliant with that. And that gives us the ability to connect potentially to other IDEs in the future that support that protocol. But it also pushes you to implement things like the ability to connect and disconnect from a running process. So once you have the mini server running, if you don't want to debug, you just want to be able to see your output, you can run it and you won't hit breakpoints or anything like that. Then when you're ready to, you can connect to it, start hitting your debug points, debug what you want to. And then when you're done, you can disconnect and you won't be debugging any longer, but the mini server will still be running. So you have tons of control over the whole process. And even with that, our tooling is only going to get better from there because we can, there's tons of ways that we can extend the VS Code extension to be able to provide insight into like one feature that I'm really excited about is the idea that when you're debugging an application, you should be able to see the output buffer as you are running through the application. Since the output buffer is kind of global to a thread, you should be able to just click on a thread and see that result right inside of your editor. So if you're building up a response to an HTTP request or something like that, you can see it in real time as it goes. And I think that tools like that are going to be really, really helpful going forward.
So we're all looking at questions.
Yeah, I can talk more about the IDE extension if you want me to. It might sound like rambling after a little while, though, unless someone gives me a question.
There were a couple questions about differences between the BoxLang syntax and Cold Fusion. And to be clear, this only applies to when you're writing BoxLang code. So if you have CFM files, those still work the same. I put two links in the chat. One is to our BoxLang documentation. We have a page called migrating from Cold Fusion CFML. And this kind of an in progress page, but it has just an overview of a bunch of the changes you'll find in the actual BoxLang syntax, which again, you have to opt into the syntax by using BoxLang extensions. This doesn't apply if you're running just an existing Cold Fusion app. But like components, Cold Fusion components, we're just calling those classes now. We're calling tags components. Default assignment scope in a function is now local as it should have been 1,000 years ago as opposed to variables. We have new operators like cast as. You can do multiple catch types like Java does. I don't like blindly copying things from Java, but I like copying things that actually make a ton of sense. Proper annotations that look similar to Java annotations. And some of this may still be changing. The documentation comments have been changed a little bit in the BoxLang source. Those no longer affect the compiled bytecode. They only affect the metadata of functions and properties and classes, which is the way it should have been in the first place. Most of the things we changed are things that we always felt should have been different, basically. Output defaults to being equal to false now on classes and functions, right? The import keyword has been completely reworked to be even cooler than Java. The concept of object resolvers has been added. So when you say new user, it can be new Java : string now, right? To directly create Java classes. We have a box resolver and a Java resolver. we're automatically casting argument, incoming argument, and return types to actually be the type you specify. We've changed how a lot of like get current template path BIFs do some things, because to be honest, it was an absolute mess in Adobe and Lucy, and neither of them even agreed on it. Oh, and we do have some of the BIF renames in here. Awesome. Because the second link I put in the chat was just to a Google Doc that we've been working on that has all of the BIFs in the entire ColdFusion language, and which ones are core and which ones were completed migrating over. A handful of those we've renamed because we always thought they were named wrong. Like serialized JSON always should have been JSON serialized to match literally every other BIF in the language, which is always name of data type, verb, action you're doing, struct, append, array, filter, right? JSON serialized. So that's also listed on this page. So anyway, if you want to kind of see what the differences are, the not diversions, what's the word I'm looking for? The separation we've done from ColdFusion to BoxLang, that migrating page in the docs is a really good place to start. Just remember that most of that doesn't apply to ColdFusion files. Those should still run the same that you're used to.
Yeah, and we're trying to keep all our docs up to date. Obviously we're still in development, so there's still pages that might be empty. There are pages that are actually auto-generated, especially the reference. Those are auto-generated every Friday, by the way. So just bear with us as obviously documenting a project like this takes time. So that's why we're not releasing immediately. We're basically making sure that everything is documented, like everything we do with Ortus. We want to make sure that the developers have what they need.
One question I've gotten asked in the past is about command box. People love command box. It's something they use a ton of. How can they use command box with BoxLang?
Sorry, I wasn't listening. What was the question?
One question I get asked a lot is about using command box with BoxLang.
Well, depends on what you mean. If you want to start a server with command box, you can do that today. We had that working when we released a couple months ago. We have instructions again on the docs. I forget what page it is off the top of my head. It's probably under running BoxLang command box. Hey, looky here. When working on adding what I need to into the next command box release, you don't need the command box BoxLang module. But if you want to start up a command box server right now, you can install the command box -BoxLang module in the command box, which will make command box aware of what BoxLang is. And then basically you can just do server start CF engine equals BoxLang. And you'll want to set your Java version to be Java 21 and a JDK specifically, as BoxLang does have a minimum Java version of 21. So it needs to be Java 21 and up, it needs to be JDK. But you can do that, and you can basically copy and paste the server start commands. And then if you're wanting to run some ColdFusion code, you'll probably want to install minimally the bxcompat module, which is what kind of kicks BoxLang over into a ColdFusion compatibility mode. And so it makes things like the ColdFusion key and the server scope available. That comes from the compat module. If you run just pure BoxLang on its own, there will be no server.lucy, server.ColdFusion keys. So you'll want to get that compatibility module installed if you're going to test out some ColdFusion code. But starting a server in command box is basically the same as before. Eventually, we will rewrite command box to be powered by BoxLang, like the actual CLI itself. That's just on our massive to-do list at the moment.
Yeah, and Ryan was asking, how can we run ColdFusion code? Did you build an entirely new CFML engine or copy the Lucy engine? Right. So just to clarify on what we've done here, think about, let's say, for example, TypeScript, right? TypeScript basically is a compiled language, right? But it's transpiled into JavaScript, right? So consider that CFML is what we transpile. So we take CFML code, right, which is in your source files, and we transpile it to the BoxLang representation, what we lovingly call the blast, right? This is the abstract syntax tree right? So we basically take that CFML code and make it look like if it's BoxLang code, and then it runs in our runtime. Now, in order for that CFML code to run in our runtime, we have to have certain compatibilities. And that's why we have a compatibility module, which basically makes your BoxLang server, right? Because Adobe and Lucy run at a server level. They makes it run like a Adobe or Lucy server. And I put a link on the compat module, but that's the idea.
Yeah, it all revolves around the AST. Because the abstract syntax tree is the lowest common denominator between the different syntaxes. So we have two different antler parsers built, one for Cold Fusion, one for BoxLang, but both of those antler parsers produce the same abstract syntax tree. In so far as the features and both code samples are the same. So whether or not you write a tag-based Cold Fusion if statement or a script-based Cold Fusion if statement or a tag-based BoxLang if statement or a script-based BoxLang if statement, those all create a box if else AST node, right? Which turns into the exact same bytecode regardless of where it came from. So the AST is that lowest common denominator. The parsers all create the AST, and then the compilation always happens at the AST level. So an if statement is an if statement, regardless of what crazy syntaxes may have been parsed to achieve it. And as far as copying the Lucy engine, Ryan, the BoxLang runtime is built 100% from scratch. We started this project back in July of last year with an empty repository. And I'm very familiar with the source code of Lucy. I've looked at it a lot, but we didn't copy and paste any kind of code. We borrowed a few ideas we thought were great ideas, but it's all completely from scratch. And that's one of the big reasons, well, we did this because we looked at the feasibility of a Lucy fork. And some of the main improvements we wanted to do in BoxLang, which was moving away from having the servlet be a core part, moving away from having the web server be a core part, moving away from the legacy code. That's all stuff that kind of required us to start from scratch. So the core of BoxLang from the beginning, we started on Java 17 and we moved to Java 21. We're using all of the modern Java features. We're using Java records. We're using pattern variables. We're using parallel streams, and those even aren't that new. Java 8 had parallel streams, but you won't find these features being used, as far as I know, at least not heavily in the other CF engines. So from the beginning, we wanted to write everything with throughput and concurrency and performance in mind, parallel processing, utilizing all the latest stuff. And one of the biggest things we didn't want to do is use Java reflection. Adobe and Lucy both use Java reflection because that's the old school way of dynamically calling Java methods on the Java class, and it's slow and it sucks, and it's been superseded since Java 7. And so we used invoke dynamic from day one. So no, we didn't copy any code from Lucy, and there's a lot of reasons why we didn't do that, because a lot of what we wanted to do was a fresh start with new technology and new ways of doing things. But we did copy behavior. So the struct key exists BIF in BoxLang should, cross your fingers, work the same as the struct key exists BIF in Adobe Cold Fusion or Lucy server if you have the compat module installed. Right. So yeah, we basically rebuilt everything. And it's kind of interesting, when we started building BoxLang, we built the script syntax and parser first. And we basically built a complete working Turing complete language with no tags or components, as we're calling them, and no BIFs, nothing but just core scripting concepts, which would be the equivalent of like Node, right? Variable assignments, scopes, if statements, try catch, throw, include, import, functions, and classes, like just the basic constructs of a language. And that was like the basis of what we built BoxLang on, was those core features. And then we added in the ability to start adding all the BIFs in the mix, the ability to add the components or tags into the mix, and sort of building onto that. And most of that is all going into modules now. Anyway, hopefully that helps clarify that.
Jordan Clark was asking about features planned in the paid offerings, because we do have different plans. I mean, we have the core, but we also have the BoxLang Plus and the BoxLang Plus Plus. If you want to maybe talk about that, Luis.
Sure. So this was obviously extremely important for us as we've been building professional open source for more than 18 years, is to give companies the option to be professionally supported, right? So it will basically be the same as we've done with Coldbox and pretty much any box product, is that you get support, right? So having a subscription that leverages for you to be able to get support with different levels of support, but you also get different capabilities, right? So Command Box Pro will be part of this, right? It's kind of blurring the lines now, but BoxLang includes already Command Box Pro, so you can do multi-site deployment, so you can do all kinds of SSNIs. So it gives you pretty much all the capabilities that we built for Command Box Pro available to you in a BoxLang subscription. We're also going to give you all the different modules that we're building for distributions, for clustering, right? More advanced PDF tooling that is already on the works, right? And that's the idea, is that as we progress through the project and we start creating more kind of enterprise features and things that we know that clients, deploying to more than one server will benefit from, that might go into the Plus and the Plus Plus versions. And in all reality, our pricing is something very important for us because we wanted to make it really fair and transparent. We didn't want to charge on CPU, on cores, on RAM, on how much money you make, how much money your neighbor makes, right? We just wanted to be fair. The idea is for this project to continue always, and for that we need our community, and everything that comes into the subscriptions goes into the product itself, right? And so everybody benefits. I mean, that has been our ethos when I started this with Coldbox, is to give back to my community so my community can give back to me. And this 18 years later, here we are, right? So that's what our subscription models are, is for you to be more involved with the project, to have complete support with any need that you have. We will get it done, because now we have access to the full stack, right? And this will include all our other projects, right? Coldbox, Testbox, Content Box, right? Command Box, it all is included in that subscription. So you're going to get benefit by being able to be a subscriber. And to sound like a salesman, the visionary licenses are available now. And the visionary licenses are basically, if you believe in this project, you can purchase a visionary license, and you can run as unlimited servers, as many as you like, for 10 years. And we'll give you support for 5 years, but this will end. This is only going to be available this year. They will not be available in 2025. This is only available before we go on full release.
It's like Kickstarter, BoxLang Kickstarter.
Yeah, and one comment I do want to make, Luis, too. This kind of came up the day we launched. Somebody had this question. When there are notifications that there's security fixes or bug fixes or anything, we're still going to post them on their website. But one thing you're going to get with subscriptions is we're going to notify you directly. So it's proactively letting you know about these updates versus you just going to the site and reading about them or following our blogs. So that is part of the SLA and the support we're going to give you. You're still going to get everything you need as far as maintaining the product and updates and patches and security and everything else. It's just, how do you get the information? So we're all looking at questions again.
Yeah,
If you asked a question above and we missed it in the chat, feel free to
just repeat it.
Yeah, repeat it again and make sure we see it. Oh, one thing someone did ask above was about tutorials getting started on BoxLang, if we had plans to create any of those. The answer is no, you're on your own. Good luck. No, just kidding. The answer is yes. We have a whole list of tutorial videos and stuff that we're going to be releasing soon. And I think those are going to CF Cast, unless I'm wrong, someone can correct me. But if you just start with the documentation, we have quite a lot of just examples and things right there to get you going. And then some video tutorial content will be coming soon as well.
We also have the Box Team Slack. We got the channels there you can get to. We have the orders community you can ask questions on. If you help Brad move, he could probably answer a few questions for you too. Carry some boxes.
Yeah, if you're near Kansas City, come help me move. It'd be great. I'm sitting in a living room full of boxes right now.
He's like, I'm looking at you, Jacob.
Yep. If only someone lived close to me.
Kansas City.
That's a good one. There any training or implementation sessions online. So yes, we right now, obviously we're working on a stable release, but as we go, we will start, we already have a new series in CFcast that you can go to, which is called BoxLang Bytes that Cristobal already created. And we're going to be pouring there the majority of snippets and learn and how to do this in there for the moment. A full CFcast session or learn or a master class will come after we release. It makes no sense to do it right now because there's a lot of things that are changing. However, that will come after we go gold. So once we go and gold and release, then we're going to start working on those sessions, and we're going to open it up to do virtual trainings and classes and the whole works. So I would say that by winter or spring of 2025, everything will go in, that machinery will start working. Yeah, we're definitely, yeah, as obviously, this has introduced a shift in what we're doing. I think that just focusing on CF is no longer what we're interested in. So there's a lot of rebranding that will be happening soon.
Did we address the questions as far as the timeline? There were a couple time related questions.
The roadmap
the
and
chat.
timeline.
Yeah.
So is there a roadmap and timeline for version 1?
Luis, tag, you're it.
Yeah. So like I mentioned before, we are on schedule right now for a fall release. So you can see our timeline in Jira. We posted it. It's open. All the different pieces that we're continuing to build and to finalize. So our intent is that we'll have everything certified, hopefully by October. So that's our goal date for now, to go live October, November, and we're on track.
So how many people in the chat have had a chance to try BoxLang out, play around with it? Anybody? I know there's a bit of delay, so we can find something else to talk about until we see the replies.
Or go to the BoxLang IO site, try.boxlang.io.
Professor Dan.
Or to speak.
That's a great question,
Ryan. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a great question. Will Ortus be committed to supporting the current Ortus ecosystem? The answer is absolutely. I think that this is something that we've done since the introduction of pretty much all the different engines. I mean, if you see our repositories, I mean, it's some crazy matrices. So I was just working on the CBORM module this week, and our matrix basically tests against like 10 different engines. So for us to add another engine is really nothing. That's the way that we've done things for the past 15 years, I would say, is that all of our products need to basically run on every single engine. So that will continue forward. There's no change in plans in that sense. However, now we have options. So that means that you're going to start seeing modules that are specifically for BoxLang. So you're going to start seeing also maybe a few BoxLang classes already inside of some of our products, right? For example, in ColdBox and TestBox, you already have different distinctions if you're running on BoxLang. So for us, it's really something that we've already done for all of our modules. It's nothing different. It's just adding one more to the matrix. And so we'll continue to support everything going forward. So, yeah.
So that's something we
Alright.
expect everyone to jump over to right away, Hebrew. It's going to be a migration. It's going to be time. There's always a lot of apps out there, and you're going to build up and support things as they continue to move over where it's necessary and makes sense.
I expect you auto switch over right away. I don't know what's taking you so long. Come on, you lazy bums.
Oh man, I don't know. One thing I'm pretty amazed at, when Luis, you first kind of really started talking about all this with us, I was like, yeah, right. Like we're gonna be able to do that. And then a year later, here we are. It's like, holy cow. How did this happen? Like a year, we got this far, and where are we gonna be in another year? It's very exciting.
Yeah, as far as being able to run apps, we mentioned it in the chat earlier. But Sean Korfeld started testing his remaining ColdBox and Lucy application on BoxLang is like the day after we announced it. He got stuck on an older version of Lucy because the OSGI changes broke his little closure integration, and so because of that, he was stuck on Java 8. So Sean already has his entire ColdBox application running on BoxLang, and he's actually testing it this week on their staging server with the hopes of pushing it to production if it all works. They apparently love using alpha versions of things. They do it with Clojure all the time, he says. So that's one of the reasons we started cutting the beta releases so we could have some actual kind of cuts in time where, you know, releases that wouldn't change. So anyway, that's a pretty good sign. I know there's obviously still stuff like Hibernate support that, you know, some people will need to have implemented. But yeah, I mean, for a basic ColdBox application to be, you know, basically fully running on BoxLang, whether or not, you know, your entire app runs at this point will probably boil down to what features you're using. Do you require the CF document tag or the CF spreadsheet tag, or, you know, some of the non-core features that we're now working on? But as far as, you know, the core BIFs, the core tags, the core functionality, it's surprisingly solid as far as the amount of stuff that's working.
Yeah, and I think that once we reach our gold release, final release in October and November, we really do expect everyone to start moving to this. That's the whole intent, right? You're gonna get a ton of benefits by moving to an engine like BoxLang that will be completely supported for you and have that peace of mind. So, yeah.
It looks like Peter Amir is asking, what's the cost of the Visionary license?
You know, you can. Here's the email. We have a presentation to give you with all the different things that you get, and you can just set up. We've done actually 3 of these sessions today, so just contact us and we'll get with you and we'll explain everything in detail of what it includes.
Are there any other questions? I'm trying to look through as well.
Yeah, if you haven't done much with BoxLang, here's a recommendation to get started. Actually, Daniel, we may need to finish filling out some of the stuff on the docs. I was noticing this during CF camp. But the feature audit tool, I don't know if we have the instructions for that fully fleshed out.
Already, I documented everything.
Okay, thank you. That's awesome. So I've already written a feature audit tool. We talked about the AST. the BoxLang AST or the Blast. That's really the chocolate chip cookie here that lets us do all of these code kind of analysis that we've wanted to do for years in ColdFusion. We've not been able to. We can parse a file, create this abstract syntax tree or AST that represents all the code in the file, and then we can take that and we can pretty print it, we can transpile it, we can analyze it, we can look for certain patterns. I've already written some tools. I was playing around at CF Camp based on feedback from Goose, who was in the chat earlier. I don't know if he's still here. They said, you know, can you write a tool that would parse a file, a CFM file, and look for variables output on the page that don't have encode for HTML, right? Or encode for JavaScript wrapped around the output. And the answer is yeah. It took me like 30 minutes to write that. And then we said, well, can we write something that will look for variables being output inside of a CF query tag, which don't use CF query param? And the answer was, yeah, it literally took me about 10 more minutes to write that. There's so many tools we can do. And so one of the tools we have right now is called our feature audit. And you can point it at a directory of code. It'll parse all the code in that directory. And it'll tell you, first of all, if there's any parsing errors, because if so, you can report that back to us. And we can take a look and see if our parser needs some fixing. Or in some cases, I find that the ColdFusion code is actually just invalid, and the existing ColdFusion engines will sometimes allow totally invalid stuff. And then it'll create a CSV file with an aggregated summary report of every BIF and every tag you're using in your ColdFusion code that isn't implemented right now in BoxLang. And so you can run that against your code base. Send us any parsing errors, and then send us your feature audit list of all the BIFs and tags you're using, just so we have an idea of what people are using. And then if there's a particular piece of functionality like Hibernate support or CF document that, you know, maybe is really important to your website, you can let us know that, and you can even, you know, look at sponsoring it. So maybe that's the next thing we build, as opposed to, you know, being something we build, you know, number 4 and number 5 down the list. So if you're looking for something just to play around with, I think that's a great place to start, is that feature audit tool. That'll let you know what your compatibility level is, and it'll let us know what the most commonly used features are.
Yeah, and also to answer Walter's question on Android. So BoxLang actually runs on Android actually right now. So there is no difference, because it's just another jar that you can basically build on top of Android Studio and add it. You can even, this is really important, is that we stuck to the JSR 223 interfaces. So if you already have an Android application written in Java, you can actually basically script in BoxLang by just calling our script engine. The full docs on the script engine are online. They're fully written and available to you. However, to get deeper integration into the SDKs for Android, that's where we want to actually create our own runtime. So that one will come a little bit later. However, you can use it now.
Yeah, and we implemented the full JSR 223 interface as well. There's 3 different interfaces. Adobe has no support for this. Lucy supports one of the 3 interfaces, and BoxLang implements all 3 of them. So the only CF engine with 100% scripting engine support. And what the JSR 223 spec is, if you're not familiar with it, is it's basically a set of Java interfaces that allow you to run any scripting language, like JavaScript, for instance, inside of the JVM. So that allows you to drop in the BoxLang jar and then run code on BoxLang just right there from inside of any Java application. Yeah, Jordan Clark has a message there in the chat saying having a good linter is awesome. And we totally agree. One of the biggest missing pieces of functionality, especially if you go off and you write Java for a year, like we've done, you really begin to realize just how many really nice tools Java developers have that ColdFusion developers don't. And it kind of makes you sad how far behind we are. And so one of our big tenets of BoxLang was not just writing the BoxLang runtime and writing the parsers, but from day one releasing with really solid IDE tooling that does debugging, linting, stuff like that. And Jacob has been working on a whole bunch of cool features. You know, if you're in a Java file, and you have not even a syntax error, but just some code that's maybe not recommended, like this method is deprecated or this, is unnecessary code. You get little warnings and informational overlays right there in your editor. And Cold Fusion has never had that level of functionality. And now we have the ability to do that. Again, all based on the AST and our parse trees. We have the ability to give you a much richer experience right there in the IDE with linting and, tooling that looks for issues and problems in your code. And those are the kind of, developer experience things that we really wanted to make a difference with BoxLang, in addition to a smaller, faster, runtime.
Yeah, actually, a question came up last week. Jacob helped answer it. As far as using if you're just looking for a Cold Fusion extension anyway, don't even want to jump into BoxLang just yet, you can still use the BoxLang extension for VS Code and still do everything you want to do.
Yeah, you absolutely can. We actually we've forked some of the community extensions that have been providing CFML support in the past. And we're layering all of our functionality on top of that. And actually, part of the great one thing that I really like about our current approach with like the multi-parsers and stuff like that is that as we're never going to lose any functionality. And the functionality that we provide for BoxLang through the language server and stuff like that, and the debugger is going to be something that we can port back to the Cold Fusion files as well, as long as you are executing them in our environment. So the BoxLang tools have a bright future ahead of them, but it's also something that we're going to be able to provide to legacy code as well.
Yeah, because currently I think people always ask, which Cold Fusion extension should I install? 1, 2, 3 different ones. Well, nope, get rid of them. Just need the BoxLang extension.
Yeah, that's right.
And
Yeah, and
also maybe another important note about Jacob's work on the debugger, it will debug not only BoxLang code, but CFML code. So that's important. That was really important for us. So if it's running in our BoxLang runtime, you can debug those CFML files.
Yeah, and I recommend, if you're doing Cold Fusion development, which I assume you are if you're in this call, I recommend you install the BoxLang extension in VS Code right now. So just uninstall. If you probably have the Kamasama K1, which is the kind of the main one we forked, it's gone stagnant. It hasn't really had any updates in the last couple of years. So I recommend that you basically uninstall the Kamasama K1, install the BoxLang one, and it should give you everything you've always had, plus everything we've added to it. So we've basically taken that and just started moving forward with it. And so it shouldn't be a loss of any functionality, like Jacob said. It should be basically the new version of that extension that we're keeping up to date. And in addition to doing everything it does for Cold Fusion, it has embedded into it our debugger for BoxLang, our BoxLang mini server, and all of our BoxLang tools alongside the existing Cold Fusion functionality that it provided.
Yeah, and on that note, just because I've had this conversation a couple times already this morning, the BoxLang VS Code extension depends on the JD21 Java 21 in order to provide some of those features, because that's a dependency of BoxLang. We have to have it in the extension in order to be able to run the language server and the mini server and the runtime. So if you don't have 21 installed on your system and you run the extension, you'll still get some of the basic support that was already there, but you won't get any of the new features because it won't be able to spin up the runtime. You'll either need to install JDK 21 on your system and set it up with your Java home and path and stuff, or there's a setting inside of the VS Code extension where you can set a custom path to a JDK that you want to use. So if for some reason you really want to keep like 11 as the primary Java installation on your system, you can do that, but you'll need to install 21 and then set it up in the VS Code extension as your preferred Java home for BoxLang. And if you need any help with that, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll help you get that set up.
And can you tell people where they could look inside of VS Code? Is there a warning or an error message somewhere that would tell them if it doesn't have the right Java version it needs for full functionality?
Yeah, so I have code in place to detect what version of Java you're running and then show a little pop-up in the bottom right. But it's hard to see sometimes. And that's actually one thing I'm not super happy with I love a lot of things about VS Code, but there's only like 2 ways to show information to the user, and it's like the tiny little pop-up in the bottom right, which I'm blind to these days because I get too many of them, or the tiny little input box at the top, which is really easy to miss as well. So if you don't have the right version of Java installed, I do try to tell you, but it's really easy to miss. And then the only other way that you'll know is that nothing will work. So those are your options. Oh, actually, there is one more thing. If you hit Control-Shift-P to bring up the command palette, there's a BoxLang output version info that will open a new tab inside of your editor, and it will list some of like the paths that you're using, the version of Java, which jars you have installed, and you can send me that output information, and that will give me a lot of context for what issue you might be running into.
Is that new?
Yeah, it's part of version 1 that was released an hour and a half ago.
Looks like I need to update.
Come on, Brad, keep up.
So far
Keep
behind.
up, Brad.
So embarrassing. Oh, on a tangentially related note, there was a thread in the Facebook Cold Fusion Programmers group yesterday, Jacob. You may want to check out. I tried to tag you in it, but I don't think I have you on Facebook, or maybe you're not on Facebook. I don't know. But somebody was talking about the Kamasama K extension, which is the one we forked. And sometimes they would have issues with the caching components functionality hanging for a very long time, and there not being any feedback in that little pop-up to kind of let them know what it was doing. And I'd mentioned that may be a possible enhancement request to be able to maybe have it output what folder it was searching at the time or something like that, so they could figure out why it was taking a while.
Yeah, that's actually that into the box. That was one of my most requested features from people, was trying to figure out what was going on with the caching and improve that. The long game is that eventually we'll completely get rid of that, and that will be handled by the language server. So part of the reason that takes so long is that it's in your extension context. It's looping through all of the files and parsing them with regular expressions in order to build up the information, and then it's trying to build a data, like an in-memory database of the information in those files, like what properties they have, if they're components, what they're named, things like that, right? And it's just because of the lack of tooling that Cold Fusion has had in the past, there's just not very many ways that you can make that better with what's available to the extension. And that's not to slight the extension. It was implemented great for what they had, right? So that's something that as we improve the language server, we're going to be able to index those things way faster, and we'll be able to do it in the background, and we'll even be able to do lazy evaluation of those things. So we can calculate it when you ask for it, instead of having to pre-figure out all of those things. But that's a down the road thing for now.
Awesome, that's a great explanation. I sent you a link to that Facebook post in Slack. Because yeah, I'd love for you to say what you just said here and there.
Okay, yeah, I'll go create a Facebook account.
The other question I saw here, I don't know, was will the BoxLang ID get updates like new Lucy BIFs, right? And to answer that question, I can answer about BoxLang. So since the runtime is embedded into the actual VS Code, right, you will have access to the latest. So automatically, every time you update the extension, if there's an update for the engine, you'll get it. There might be cases later on where in our extension, we're going to have to basically choose a version of BoxLang you want to work with. But that's something down the road that Jacob has already planned anyways. Plus the ability that every project could have different BoxLang versions, because that problem will happen later on as well.
Yeah, I just think it's awesome that BoxLang itself is so tiny that we can just, embed the entire runtime inside of our VS Code extension, because it's just a little, 6 megabyte jar. So Ryan just asked about monitoring tools. The question is absolutely yes, and that'll be part of the BoxLang Plus offerings. Excuse me. And they're in the design phase right now. So yeah, monitoring and visualizers is all going to be part of that. I don't know if you've seen, Ryan, any of our keynote presentations that we did for Into the Box or CF Camp. We have some mock-ups of how we're kind of re-envisioning the administrator to be like an Electron app you can run, locally on your desktop and connect to a server and kind of manage everything from there. But we have a lot of plans of how we can kind of build in visualization right into that as well, and kind of performance metrics. And Luis can add anything if he has to that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Fusion Reactor, you can use it now, right? We've actually been using it. Brad can actually talk about his experience. We already use it to do performance tuning on BoxLang itself. Fusion Reactor is a great product. You attach it as a Java agent and you're ready to roll. So there might be adding future things about BoxLang, but that's their prerogative. They haven't approached us to do native support for BoxLang. But it's all available there. The other thing that we did when we designed BoxLang is that we did it like we did Coalbox, is that we wanted the ability to instrument and the ability to listen to what's going on inside of the engine itself. And in our case, all the different services created in BoxLang. So in all reality, the majority of things that we did in CB Debugger are transferable to BoxLang. So our idea is that once we finish the new version of CB Debugger, which Scott Steinbach is helping tremendously on, once that is done and we have our new UI and everything, we're going to be focusing on bringing the CB Debugger into BoxLang as the BoxLang debugger, basically.
Yep. And Luis's initial point is absolutely correct. Fusion Reactor does already work if you already have a Fusion Reactor license. Gunnar just asked, does Fusion Reactor fully work on Java 21? The answer is no, but it does work. Because I've been using it. When you start up, so let me finish my original sentence. If you're using Command Box, for example, and you had the Command Box Fusion Reactor module installed, and you start up a BoxLang site, you'll just automatically get Fusion Reactor tracking of all the requests. That'll pretty much just work out of the box. Now, you do see some errors in the console related to their bytecode instrumentation when you try to run Fusion Reactor on Java 21. So I'm sure there may be some features or some instrumentation that doesn't fully operate correctly, but generally speaking, you can still open up the Fusion Reactor interface and see all the requests and see all the transactions in it. So it's not like completely broken, but it's not fully supported. But I have been bugging them about that, and they told me that they're working on it. But yeah, and if you want to use Fusion Reactor with a mini server, you just have to add the Java agent manually like you would any other server. But yeah, you can use your existing Fusion Reactor licenses today exactly like you do with any other command box server or any other server at all for that matter. These are great questions, guys.
Yeah, and I think these town meetings is something we really wanted to do because at Orchards we believe that we want to be transparent with everything we do, especially pricing, right? I think this imperative for us, and we do it with everything that we do. We follow this golden rule of do to others as you want them to do to you, and this is something I would have loved, to tell you the truth, involved in other projects. So that's why we started it, and we want to continue this. It might not be every month, but maybe every so months we can be doing this and be able to bring about questions and answer anything you have ideas, and just have the team together. So this is something we definitely want to continue. I'm pretty sure we'll do it again, maybe in a few months before release.
I see there's a question about using the LSP with NeoVim from Victor. No, I don't think anybody's tried that yet, but if you want to reach out to me, you can help me. You can be the first one to help me figure that out.
I'm not familiar with NeoVim. Is that just like Vim, but a new version of it?
It's like Vim, but it's the chosen one.
The chosen one. Oh, I see what they did there.
I don't actually know, but it looks like it. They advertise that they support the LSP, the language server protocol. So I don't see any reason why it shouldn't work.
Well, yeah, as long as they've followed the protocol that we implemented, I think there's a lot of possibilities. I know there's going to be people asking us about IntelliJ as well. VS Code is obviously where the kind of critical mass of Cold Fusion users are, but
Not only that, I mean, with experience in reaching out to IntelliJ in the past, they do what they want. So if the people, enough people basically scream at them, they will do things. If not, it's not on their roadmap. So I would say that if somebody wants to use IntelliJ, they're going to have to go and scream at them in order to get it done. But our focus is to have our own.
Okay, well, it sounds like we had a lot of great questions, and it looks like we got a lot of to-dos, more videos and more documentation and lots of cool modules, but I think there's some great exciting times coming for BoxLang. So been really good to see everyone in the chat. We had a lot of people viewing, so thanks everybody for coming, and we'll see you, like Louis said, in a couple of months here.
All right, folks.